Like, how long did it take you to get from, point A to where you are today with your company? And most of the responses were 7 years. Like, it took 7 years to get to this point of, financial freedom, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. And the company having enough people and scaled and all of that, you're kind of reaping the rewards of your 7 years of hard work.
It doesn't come fast. The thing that sucks about that is we see the picture of it. We only take notice of it once it's big enough and solid enough to take notice of it. We don't see all the work that went into getting it there. And that is unfortunate because there are so many lessons in there that are good.
Yeah, for sure. The good news is we get to talk about them right here on this podcast.
Right on, man.
Welcome to Grit Meets Growth, the podcast where we explore getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. Now let's get after it.
All right. Like we talked about last week, you're at a different place than I am, but you know what? We still have lessons to be able to share across the board.
What's on your agenda for this week? What do you want to talk about, man?
It's interesting. This topic kind of keeps bouncing in my head. Things aren't always going to be perfect, right? People want to have, we as humans want everything to be the best it can be, right? Is there such thing as perfect? It's never going to be, right? So at some point, you just have to own it and take it for what it's worth, right? Make the best of what you have in front of you. And it's not necessarily going to be perfect. We talk a lot about that with related to weather on motorcycle trips, right? You're planning a trip. You start looking at weather a week out. And there's rain every day in the forecast. You're like, man, I'll be honest. There's not a lot of fun in riding in the rain. It's just not a lot of fun. But if you have to do it, you have to do it, right? If you've made that commitment to your trip, you do it. But the reality is we have an option always to be able to say, based on what the weather forecast is, we can pull out of that trip, right? I'm just going to cancel the trip. I'm not going to go. The reality is you'd be missing out on a lot. And I can't tell you how many times a week ahead of time that forecast looks terrible, but coming into the day, you barely get a drop. You might get a sprinkle. You might not get anything at all. The sun may shine on you that day. But if I listened to the forecast and everybody else, here I'd be stuck and not going through with what I intended to do. And I think that story and that feeling can transcend to so many other things in our life, right? When we let people dictate what we're going to do, what does that ultimately do to your goals? Do your goals get set aside based on somebody else's opinion? Right? Looking inward and know that we're our own greatest resource. Follow your heart, right? You hear that story, time and time again. Follow your heart. Guess what? Your heart knows.
100%, man. And I think as much as other people can be our greatest enemy, we can be our own greatest enemy too. And like you said, that weather report comes up and all of a sudden some fear creeps in and we're like, oh, this trip's not going to be what we wanted it to be. We just got back from a camping trip right up on the edge of the Boundary Waters with Christina, my two kids, and tent camping is not for everybody. And, but everybody agreed they were going to go on this trip with me. And I was stoked about it, right? Super excited about it. And exactly what you said, you look at the weather And the fear creeps in like, well, if the weather's bad, we shouldn't even go. We shouldn't even do this trip. You get a little closer, weather shifts again. You get a little closer, the weather shifts again. And then when you're there, it's beautiful. Like we had a fantastic trip. It was a little warm, but it was a good trip, right? And we had some of the best family time that we could have possibly had because we were off the grid and we were, in the woods, and it was awesome. But that fear creeps in and it starts to eat you up. And we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. So Jamie Tates, who we're good friends with, both of us, just wrote this book called You Are Here. We've both been reading it, and she had something that really stuck out to me. So here's what she said. Personally, I deal with fear every single day. I haven't always known that, though. I had to consciously examine the idea of fear before I realized how pervasive it was. Yet as soon as I started to look closer, I began to see fear was the root cause of nearly everything I struggled with. I often gave it another name like jealousy, isolation, or feeling stuck. But when I peeled the layers back, fear was always at the core. Jealousy was me fearing I wasn't going to make it. Isolation was me feeling vulnerability with the people around me. Feeling stuck was being afraid to take a leap. It was such a light bulb moment for me. I then started to see that I could control my reaction to fear. If I called my fear out, I could deal with it more directly and make it so much easier to manage. And I'm going to tell you, I have spent so much time in my life fighting fear. I mean, we've talked about it. You start a business. It's the scariest thing you could possibly do. You start a family. Neither one of us, when we had kids or got married, knew what we were getting into. It's scary. But if you either let the fear rule you or you manage the fear. You got to pick one or the other. And if you can start to manage it a little bit, it's a game changer.
Move 2 states away, right? Fear over that. Move 2 states away without a job, right? Yeah, you just embrace it and continue on, right? I mean, and enjoy that moment, I think, is what I really take away from that, right? Fear certainly can creep in, but if you can hold that fear at bay and just look at the positive of the situation and just embrace it, there's always going to be challenge in everything that we take on in life. The motorcycle trip, there's plenty of excuses, and the same thing with camping, to not do it. It's too hot, it's raining, it's too cold, right? There's going to be challenge. There's going to be obstacles that are going to be presented in front of us every single day. We get to choose how we deal with them, how we overcome those obstacles.
So let me ask you something, and I'm curious to hear your answer to this, because you hit on it a little bit in the last episode. You've been through cancer. How did you deal with fear through that? Because having not been through that, I don't know how I would have showed up in that instance, but I know you well enough to know that you showed up well getting through it. If you're willing to share, I'm curious about that.
I honestly never let fear creep in. And I can't tell you why, but yes, I heard those words, you have cancer. And they're not great words. They're not good words. I don't want anybody to ever hear that. The reality is, you do. I was fortunate enough. I had great doctors that really put my mind at ease. I put my faith in God and my faith in God to guide the hands of the surgeons to take care of what I needed to have done. I set goals for myself, along with my doctors, with my caretakers, to say, what are my goals every single day? Like, not what's my big goal, right? Clearly the big goal is to get out of the hospital. What do I have to do today? What do I have to do in the next 6 hours? What do I have to do in the next hour to move me in the direction of that overall goal? I don't want to fixate on that goal. What are those steps that I need to take to get me to that goal? And that's how I embraced it. But I think more than anything, it really came back to my faith in God. Like, I truly believe God doesn't put any opportunity in front of us, good or bad, that we're not ready for. And I took that same approach with the cancer diagnosis. I didn't have time to think about it. Everything moves so fast. Like, I went from having issues to going in, for the testing, to 10 days later having surgery. I didn't have time to think about it. That fear never had an opportunity to set in, because there were steps that we were taking. And when I say we, myself and my doctors along the way.
If you had let the fear creep in, if you had cracked the door open to it, or you had opened the door up to it, do you think it could have consumed you?
Absolutely. Very easily. And thinking back on it now, I say that absolutely. Was it always present? Yep. It was right there, right? It's always, that fear was always lurking right next to me.
I feel like it always looks for an opportunity too. It is always looking for an opportunity for that door to crack open just a little bit, where it can kick the door down and grab you and hold on to you. Like, I look back at going through my divorce, and as a dad of young kids going through a divorce, I experienced a lot of fear in that. Different than yours, but probably similar in some cases as well. And what I realized very quickly was there were a handful of things that I could control to protect my kids and to help them develop some resilience and to keep them in a good spot. And all I could control was what I could control. And that was part of me managing the fear, was looking at those things. I can control this, this, and this. I can control how I show up as a dad for my kids as they're going through this. I can control if I'm investing time in them, if I'm listening to them, if I'm asking them questions, if I'm loving up on them. And I mean, like, you got to control what you can control, and you have to find ways to keep that fear at bay. And you're never going to get rid of it. Heard somebody say, fear can ride in the car with you, but it stays in the back seat. You don't ever let it drive. It rides in the car, but it's not in control of the steering wheel or the accelerator or the brakes. And that's it's pretty true.
I'd agree. Dealing with those fears, and I think, as Jamie points out in the book, right, just take them head on. Go through some self-analysis to understand what is the root cause of that fear. What's really driving the fear? Is it fear itself? Or is there something underlying that is really driving that fear? And address that first and foremost.
And along those lines, the reality is, a lot of the things we're fearful of, a lot of the things that scare us, are never going to happen. It's exactly the same as the weather. I'm afraid it's going to rain. I'm afraid it's going to be too hot, too cold, whatever. And then the moment comes and it's not, all those things we feared don't ever even show up. But we were scared of them, and we almost let them stop us from jumping into an opportunity because we were scared. That's the same as starting a business. It's the same as launching a business, running a business, managing a business, whether you've been in it for 6 months or a year or 10 years. Fear is always kind of that same thing. It's always on your shoulder, looking for an opportunity to get in your head. And for you to say, I'm scared if I hire another person, something like, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm scared if I don't get another account, I'm not going to be able to do it. But I'm scared if this happens, I'm not going to be able to do it. Fear wants to stop you from doing everything. Everything that's valuable in your life, everything that's good in your life, fear wants to hold you back and keep you from doing anything. And managing it is the only way to get through it. It's hard, but you got to fight.
Yeah. We have a saying amongst our group of friends that I ride with. Somebody starts talking and whining about, the rain or the potential of rain. You been wet before? Yeah. You going to be wet again? Yeah. Then shut up. Right? Forget about it. Why let that consume you? Like, let's go. Saddle up. Do you have the gear to be able to ride through it? Have you been in it before? Yep. Every one of us has ridden in the rain. So what's the big deal?
The gear, I'm glad you said that, because the gear is one of the keys to that. If you like, two things.
It's the key to being comfortable.
100%.
Or as comfortable as you can be in that situation.
Yeah. But here's the thing. If we expect that challenges are going to come our direction, which I just talked about this last night to a group of guys. You're either coming out of a challenge, you're in a challenge, or there's a challenge coming for you that you don't see coming yet. That's the deal. We're all going to go through challenges, right? So you need to expect the challenge, not be so shocked when it lands on your plate. But then the other side of it is gear up as best you can so you're prepared for it. When you go backpacking, you find the right tent, you find the right stove, you find the right boots, you gear up as best you can to prepare for whatever's going to come. You bring the right rain gear. You're prepared with a first aid kit in case you fall, you get hurt. All of these things, you're prepared for as much as you can possibly prepare for before you leave, so that when something bad does happen, and it probably will, there's going to be some challenge that comes your direction. You're not surprised by it, and you're not completely caught off guard with it where you're unprepared. That's huge.
So talking about camping, so you're preparing for these issues. At what point do you stop preparing?
God, that's a good question.
Because the reality is you cannot prepare for every single thing, right? Every little nuance. There's no way you can prepare yourself for that. And if you're hiking, there's no way you can carry every bit of gear for that situation. So how do you keep from over preparing?
That's a phenomenal question. Here's where I'm going to go with that for just a second. Over preparing. If you over prepare and you get so laser focused on all the bad things that could happen, you don't enjoy the journey. You don't enjoy the time outside. You don't enjoy the hike. You don't enjoy the experience. And that's the same in anything that we do. You don't enjoy the ride if you're over prepared for the ride, right? So I think we prepare as best we can, and we're realistic about what's coming. And then we know there are things I'm not prepared for, but I at least have resources that I can reach out to beyond what I've got with me right now, where if I hit something I'm not prepared for, I've got people I can call. Like if something really bad happens on a hike, I can call somebody, they can come in and get me. Same on the bikes, same if you surround yourself with the right people in business or in anything in life, same with that. You surround yourself with the right people at the gym. I was at the gym the other day and I was lifting, and I had a dude that I've never met before who stopped as he was walking past me, and he stopped and he looked at me and he goes, "If you keep lifting like that, you're not going to make any gains. Like you're doing it all wrong." And so I had this moment where I was at the fork in the road, because I'm like, my ego wanted me to say, "Dude, I'm good. I don't need you to tell me how to do this. I'm good. I got this." And I caught myself and I sat and I shut up and I listened. And I said, "Help me. Show me how to do this better." And this guy, I don't know him. I've never seen him at the gym before. I may never see him again. He spent like 5 minutes with me, explained to me how to do it better, explained to me what I was doing wrong, explained to me how to do it right. I owe this dude. Like, I'm going to make bigger gains because somebody saw me doing something wrong. They stopped, they told me, and then I listened. So I think when your question about being prepared, having somebody who you can call on when you catch yourself and you're not fully prepared, you prepare as best you can. But then you got to have some people around you who will help you. So
agreed. I think over preparing, thinking about every little nuance, every little thing that could potentially go wrong, I think, is another word for fear. Plan for the big things, right? Put the big golf balls, put the big rocks in, plan for the big rocks. The rest of that stuff, who cares? Yep, it's going to come at you. But you know what? If you're prepared for the big rocks in life, you can take care of that little stuff, no problem.
I love what you just said, where you said over preparing is equivalent to fear, because I had not thought about it like that, but it's spot on. Fear is what drives you to over prepare. And there is a difference between being prepared and being over prepared.
At some point, you just have to enjoy the moment, regardless of what it is. Just enjoy that moment.
Yeah.
Guess what? Tomorrow, the next hour, the next minute, none of that's guaranteed. So enjoy where you're at. Enjoy what is going on and what is around you at that moment.
How do you do that? How do you be present when you got all this other stuff swirling in your head? We've talked a little bit about this in the past, but it's still something that I find myself a little bit challenged with from time to time. There's always something to be thinking about, something to be doing. Like, you got a future vision you're trying to chase. You want to focus on that, but being present in the moment is so important.
I think it's, first of all, it's a mind shift. Your blog yesterday, get rid of the B word. It's all about mindset, right? Putting yourself in the right place, calling it what it really is, right? It's not being, yes, we're all busy, but what is it that's causing me to be busy, right? I think it's all about a mindset shift as it relates to that. I don't know if you want to kind of talk about what you wrote yesterday.
Yeah, like the blog from yesterday. This was the Orange Ball Insights blog from yesterday. The focus of it was the B word. We ask people all the time, how you doing? I'm busy. It is the biggest throwaway word any of us could possibly use. I'm busy. I'm busy. How's the family? We're busy. How's work? I'm busy. How's life? Busy. It's the most throwaway response we could possibly have. And then somebody asks us to do something, and our response shifts from I'm busy to I'm too busy, which is really code word for if somebody asks you to do something and you say I'm too busy, that's code word for it's not a priority to me. It's just not a priority. It's not important to me.
But that conversation isn't just with other people, it's with ourselves as well.
Totally. I'm too busy to take some time to invest in myself. I'm too busy to go to the gym. I'm too busy to spend time in this relationship with my spouse. We've all got 100 things going on at any given time that could take our attention. Being able to prioritize where we put that attention is key. And too often we just slide into I'm busy or I'm too busy, and that's our go-to. And that's a really easy way for us to make excuses. And we need to label that as what it is, because it's an excuse. And if we got serious about where we were spending our time and quit using I'm busy as our go-to, nobody wants to hear it. When people say, how you doing? I'm so busy. Okay, I get it. We all are. Like, next, how are you really doing? Like, dive in a little deeper than that, you know?
Yeah, and I've been wicked guilty of that. You know, whether it's, entertaining, prospects and customers and, doing that and thinking that's more important than what I have going on with my family. And I think, to answer your question, how do you go about really enjoying that moment? I think it's really about setting your own priorities, what's important for you in your life. And really sitting down and having that conversation with yourself to really figure out what's important. What's important to me isn't the same thing that's going to be important to you. Sure, there's going to be some overlap, but it's not going to be the same, right? That conversation that you have with yourself is going to be different than the conversation I have with myself. Ultimately, are the goals that we're going to achieve through that conversation going to be similar? Probably. How we get there completely different, right? I think having that conversation with yourself and really going through that effort is going to be key.
There's something so important about understanding what your purpose is and what your mission is. Like if you think of a soldier on the battlefield, they know what their mission is, and everything they do ties back to that mission. Every action they take, every direction they travel, everything they do is tied back to accomplishing that mission. And I wrote a little bit about this earlier in the week as well. You have to be on top of what your personal mission is. Like, what's my personal mission? What's my purpose? And take that time to get introspective about that and really dive in and think about it. Because if you don't do that, you travel through life on a very winding path. And you're going to travel through life on a winding path no matter what. It's never straight. But not knowing what your mission and purpose is and what direction you're trying to head in life can take you in a lot of really long directions, makes it harder for you to reach your goals, makes it harder for you to accomplish what's really important in life. It's an important thing to spend some time on.
It is. And those answers, I truly believe, are all inside. We have, each and every one of us has those answers. If we can really just sit and listen to our heart. I say it's our heart, but listen to ourselves. We are our own greatest resource, right? Quiet that noise. We've all got noise. The B word is the biggest bunch of noise there is, right? And all of the activities that we use to support being busy are all just noise. If we could just shut that out for a minute, sit down, introspective, look at ourselves inside, and just listen to what our heart is telling us, I truly believe we can enjoy that moment.
Well, and I can say as a dude, it's really easy to hear somebody say, listen to your heart, and be like, it's kind of fluffy. There's nothing fluffy about it. There's you want to show up and you want to accomplish what the most important things in your life. You have to be in tune with what your heart is telling you. It can't just be all in your head. Mindset's super important, but mindset has to be tied back to your heart. The two work side by side. They're not independent of each other. And they're only 12 inches apart. So they're connected. They have to be. So that's one of the most important conversations to have. And it can be, we go back to, I'm too busy to go down that path and think about that. You're not. If it's important, make it a priority.
And realize it isn't always going to be perfect. But just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Right? That's all we can do, is continue to move forward. Because forward is the only way that's going to get us to our goals. Can't go back. Our goals aren't back there. Our goals are in front of us. So the only way we can achieve those goals is continue to put one foot in front of the other and keep walking towards them. Are we going to have to sidestep, objects along the way? Yep. Are we going to have a plan to deal with those? You bet, right? It comes back to that conversation around planning, right? But don't get yourself into a situation of over planning. Continue to focus on where your goal is and continue to knock those things down. I'm seeing so many people in and around me knock their goals down. I'm so happy and excited for them. It's so much fun to see.
Have you ever been at you ever played bingo?
Yep.
You hear somebody win at bingo, and what's the noise when somebody wins at bingo? What's the noise that murmurs through the room? We are all disappointed we didn't win, and we are verbal about the fact that it sucks that somebody else won.
I was one number away, man.
We should celebrate each other's wins every single day. And people should celebrate our wins. That's the way this should work. It shouldn't work like we're in a bingo parlor, and when somebody else wins, that means I lost. That's not the way the world works. There's enough out there for all of us to win. This is not a somebody wins, I lose. That's the battle every day. We need to celebrate each other's wins. Exactly what you just said. I'm seeing people win, and I'm excited for them. That's huge, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. that's a good, as we roll out of this, that's a good thing for all of us to think about this next coming couple of weeks. How are we going to do that? How are we going to celebrate each other's wins, and how are we going to be intentional to make that part of what we're doing this week? You see somebody at the gym, celebrate their win. You see somebody at work, celebrate their win. You see your spouse or your kids, celebrate their wins. Make that part of how you show up. It'll change your week.
Guaranteed.
Right on, man.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of Grit Meets Growth. We have 2 asks for you as we wrap things up today. First of all, if you enjoyed this podcast or you got something out of it today, we'd love to have you subscribe and follow us so that you can get your ear in on more of these conversations. And the second thing we'd love to have you do is if you heard something today that you think could help somebody else or that they need to hear, we just ask you to share the podcast and let this message be magnetic to as many people as possible. So with that, have an awesome day. Make it happen. Get out there, do the work, and let's get after it.